I have my notes here because this is going to be a jammed-packed episode. Welcome back to the channel, you guys. It's Victoria Scott. Today is my week 2 update for my mini cut. If you guys have been following the series, I'm going to give you guys an overview of what's been going on this past week with the cut. I'm also going to go through my dieting when traveling. I've been telling you guys on Instagram that I was traveling this weekend. We are here in Dallas for the FMG Pro-Am competition. I'm not competing, but we are here to support, and I wanted to share with you guys how I navigate my diet while on the road. We're going to be here for 4 days. And then I'm also going to be answering some of your questions. I had quite a few questions come in earlier this week through Instagram, so I always put up a question box. What do you guys want to know more about? How can I help you? And see if you guys can get some nuggets from what I do in my personal journey and how maybe you might be able to apply it to your journey. So so first things first, my progress updates. So things are going really well. It's always a little bit rocky getting into a dieting phase. I know for me personally, because I have diet resistance. Like, I'm not super keen on wanting to lower my calories and do more cardio. So it is a real grind for me to have to get up and get the things done. So usually within a week or two, I'm more into a groove and I feel good, and the stuff that you don't want to do just kind of gets easier. So right now I've been doing 35 to 45 minutes of walking 5 days a week. So that is pretty much locked in. I am actually really enjoying it. I can actually just feel my body just feels better getting back into that routine. So I've been doing that along with some stretching post cardio. And then I've been lifting 5 days a week. Now, this is a travel weekend, as I mentioned, so I adapted for that and sort of consolidated 2 of my workouts into one, so just 4 days this week. But next week I will be back onto a 5-day split. So, results. I will toss up some photos that I took yesterday before, actually no, I took them a day early. I took them on Thursday because I knew Friday was going to be packed with travel and getting everything ready. We have a dog sitter coming to take care of the Frenchies and just, getting all the stuff organized. So I did my photos a day early, and that coincidentally was also my lowest weight for the week. So when I started this cut, I was I hit a high weight actually. It was 161.4. Now I know I was holding quite a bit of water after coming off of food poisoning and travel and whatnot. So my weight did drop down pretty quickly. My average from week 1 was 158.5. My lowest weight this week was 156.4. And my average was 157.5. So my average and my low were still both lower than the previous week, so we are right on track. We haven't made any changes to my nutrition, and I think this is a real key thing that a lot of people want to know or ask about often, is how often should I change my macros. So again, I do follow a meal plan. I do know what the macros are. I shared those in the previous video, and those have not changed. So we're keeping things the same for right now because my body's responding really well. My energy's good. My hunger has actually been picking up. So I don't know if I mentioned this last time as well. Coming off of food poisoning, I had no appetite. So I just felt like I was eating because I knew I needed to eat, but I really wasn't hungry like I would typically expect to be hungry when I started cuts. So this past week, I did notice the hunger really starting to ramp up, and even going to bed hungry a couple nights and waking up hungry. That's a good sign. So I tell my clients all the time, if you are not hungry in a deficit, I would be concerned because you ought to be hungry. You are underfeeding the body essentially. And after so many days and so much energy expenditure, the signals are supposed to be there. That is a natural biological response. So we actually want hunger. And when you feel hungry, the answer is not to eat when you're in a deficit. The answer is to distract yourself and go do something else to make sure that you don't eat, because as long as you're staying on plan, you will see the progress, but the challenge is always resisting these hunger pains, right? So that also leads into a question that I got. I guess I'm going to kind of skip ahead here. Somebody did ask me what does my diet consist of? And, my diet doesn't change a whole lot whether I'm in maintenance or building or cutting. I genuinely like the food that I eat. So I do primarily focus on whole foods. I've been eating like that for a long time, and I just really enjoy it, frankly. Even when I travel, I find myself looking to sort of make that exact meal because that's truly what I actually want. Now, of course, like on occasion, of course, I want like a cheeseburger, I want some pizza, or whatever, right? But that's not necessarily like a daily meal option for me that I just want to go have. Part of it is out of habit, and the other part is like I know how I feel when I eat those things frequently. And so, one-off times it's fine, but if you eat like that all the time, you just start to feel really sluggish and kind of watery and not so great. So my foods, I do eat animal protein, so chicken, beef. Actually, chicken and beef are probably my two primary protein sources. Chicken, beef, and eggs, and whole eggs, not just egg whites. And then when I go outside of that, I'll also have some fish, shrimp, occasionally protein powder. I actually don't drink a lot of protein shakes, and my protein is up above 165 grams per day. So I do get all of my protein for the most part from like straight protein sources. One thing that's a little bit unique too with my meal plan is I do count my protein just from my animal sources for the most part. So I make sure that I'm getting 165 grams of protein solely from chicken, beef, eggs, protein powder, whatever, right? Like just from that. And of course there are, trace amounts of protein in like oatmeal or, like just the extra stuff. Maybe if you have like some sourdough bread or something, there's going to be a gram or two in there. Now that does contribute. It's not like it's not protein. It's not like it doesn't count, but that would be in addition to the animal protein source that I have. And so I don't think that there are actual studies on this, frankly, because here's the thing. A lot of people will cite studies and they'll be like, oh, this meta-analysis and da-da-da, and they'll say all these things, but not everyone's doing studies on all these little nuanced things. For one, it's extremely expensive to conduct these studies, and two, you have to get people to be compliant on this sort of protocol for a long enough time to draw conclusions. So what I would say is, when I look at somebody who is a top physique athlete, myself, or if you follow anyone in the sort of physique space who has like a really next level physique, not just somebody who's interested in, they do it as a hobby, but people who are like top level, they are eating primarily animal-based protein sources, and they're making sure they're getting the highest quality ingredients possible to kind of fill in that protein requirements. So do with that information what you want to do with it. Like that's just, I've taken that information, I said I'm going to apply that to myself, and these are my results. So my carbohydrate sources, primarily potatoes, rice, oats, cream of rice, some sourdough bread. Occasionally I'll have like a wrap or something like that, veggies, and fruit, of course. I do eat fruit. I get that question often. People think I don't eat fruit for some reason. I pretty much toss between like berries, bananas, sometimes pineapple, grapes occasionally. I love kiwi, and I love grapefruit. So those are like my personal favorites, and those are sort of things that I would rotate into my my week depending on how I'm feeling, and also whatever looks fresh, right? And then fat sources. Now, most of my fats are coming from my animal protein sources. So whatever is like lingering that I need to fill in the gaps, I will typically opt for oils. So olive oil, coconut oil, grass-fed butter, high quality fat sources. I do eat avocado on a daily basis, which is, avocado is a fruit, so it is still a fat and a carbohydrate source. So that kind of gets mixed in there too, but that's the staple in my diet for sure. So again, lots of like really whole foods. I will do a day of eating for you guys because I had that request actually here. I'll do a day of eating before my calories get lower. So you can see what it looks like, a little bit higher and also a little bit lower. All right, so like I mentioned, we are traveling this weekend. So we flew into Dallas yesterday afternoon, and we're here Saturday, Sunday. We leave on Monday, like early evening. So essentially like 3 days of meals that I needed to plan for. I always take every travel situation on like it's a situational thing. So I look at what do I have available to me in terms of like where am I staying, hotel, do I have a kitchen available, so microwave, refrigerator, like what's available to me, and then I sort of backtrack and plan from there of like what's going to be the best, easiest, convenient things for me to do. So in this situation, I knew I was going to have a mini refrigerator. I didn't know I was gonna have a microwave. However, when we got here, I asked if they had any upgrades available, and they did, and it was only $40 a night, so I said yes, like let's do it, and didn't realize I was actually gonna get like a little mini kitchen set up too. So we do have a microwave on this trip with a little sink, and that was unexpected. But on this trip, I brought 10 meals with us, so 5 for me and 5 for Brad, and that is supposed to be about, 2 meals Saturday, 2 meals Sunday, 1 meal Monday for us, which obviously doesn't cover all our meals. They're basically like lunch and like a meal 2, meal 3. For breakfast, I made my protein pancakes. And if you guys have followed me for a while, I talk about this a lot. I love my protein pancakes. I used to make them daily, especially when I worked in corporate. It was my go-to breakfast. I'd make a batch for the whole week, wrap them up, throw them in the refrigerator, and then boom, it was like grab and go. I also love them as like an afternoon snack. So again, I just toss it in my bag, and if I'm on my way somewhere to an appointment or something in the afternoon, it's great. These ones I sprinkled some chocolate chips in, so I can eat it cold, and it's almost like a chocolate chip muffin tasting thing. So I made those for my breakfast. I have 2 MegaFit meals, and then I knew I was gonna have dinner out pretty much every night. So that was already kind of something I knew I was gonna do, which leads me to my next point. I intentionally I do what's called calorie shifting. So I shift my fats to later in the day. I know when I go to eat out, most of my fats are going to be in that last meal, because when you eat at restaurants, they usually cook things in butter and oil and whatnot. So I will ask them to leave off oils and butters, but you also just kind of never know. So just to err on the side of caution, I intentionally make sure that my meals earlier in the day are lower in fat. And when I say low fat, I mean like less than 8 grams per meal, maybe even 4 grams per meal. So very, very low fat earlier in the day, high protein, and then knowing my dinner is gonna be out somewhere, it gives me more flexibility and allows me to have a little bit more of a calorie bank for that meal. So that was my game plan for this particular weekend. Now, if it was a full week, or if we were in some other situation where maybe I didn't have a kitchen, I might have a completely different approach. So I do take it, and I've been in all kinds of situations, I do take it as a case-by-case scenario. And depending on what phase of dieting I'm in, if I'm in maintenance or building or fat loss, that will also sort of dictate how flexible I am. So yeah, I brought a small backpack with MegaFit meals in the bag for us, threw them in the refrigerator when we got here. I had my protein pancakes wrapped up and ready to go, and I also brought some protein powder, which again, I mentioned before, I don't typically have a lot of protein powder, but this is a situation where I would have protein. MegaFit Meals also has these, it's like a banana muffin loaf. Did you know I brought those, by the way? So each loaf, I looked at the macros, is about 50 grams of carbs. I think it was 50 grams of carbs, 10 fat, and like 2 proteins, something. It's basically a carb, right? It's banana bread. But I was like, okay, well, I can pair that with a scoop of protein and now have a complete meal. So that's also going to be my meal 4. And then, like I said, my dinner later is just going to be something, we'll see, probably like a steak and potatoes or something, whatever they have at the restaurant. So that is really how I navigate. Again, in this situation, it's a short weekend. I didn't bring all of my vitamins and all my stuff. I just bring my staples. I bring my probiotic. I brought my magnesium supplements, and another supplement that I really like to travel with is like a vitamin C immune boosting supplements by Truline. And they actually sent me some sample packs a while ago, and I loved them. So I always travel them. They're part of my daily routine, but they also come with me on the road. So I bring that with me, and I just keep it simple. Monday we'll be back home. I can have all my regular stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of travel. If you guys have questions or situations for you, let me know. Oh, I forgot something. So let me back up. Before I knew we were going to upgrade, I thought I knew we were going to have a microwave. So you guys are probably wondering, like, okay, well, if you brought these frozen meals, how do you heat them up without a microwave? Great question. I bought on Amazon a while back, and so this little hot pot travels with me everywhere. It's very lightweight. It's an electrical hot pot. You just plug it in the wall. There's two settings. There's like a warming and a cook, and that's it. So that little hot pot goes in my bag, and I think it's like, I'll link it for you guys in the caption below, or what is it called? I'll link it below in the description for you guys. But it's probably like, I don't know, $40. And it's just enough to just throw. You can throw something in there from frozen, put it in there, put the lid on, let it heat up, and it's perfect. Sometimes I actually prefer it over the microwave, frankly. So I brought it with me as a way to heat up our food, but again, we have a microwave, so that saves a little bit of time and a little bit of cleaning also. So that is something, if you are somebody who travels frequently and you're not sure about the hotel situation, and if you have something to heat things up, that has been a lifesaver. I use it at my competitions, and I use it when even when we've gone out of the country. I took it to the Bahamas with us, just, so I had something to heat my food up with, and it's great. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions on how I travel with food or like any other things, if this sparked any questions, just let me know below. I'll make sure to cover it in a future video. I had a couple of questions that came in. I have actually a bunch. I'll see how many I can get through here in the next few minutes. One question that came up was, how do I measure success in changing your physique? And that is a really interesting question, because so many of my clients get to this point. They come in, they've lost 20, 30, 40 pounds, and that was like, that was it. That was the goal. That's how far they thought forward, basically. So they never really thought past that, like, well, what's next? And you might be somebody who's kind of come to that place too, is like, wow, I didn't know I could do this, and I've lost all this weight, now what? And the crazy thing is, year 2 and year 3 and year 4 in fitness, and as you go further along, like I'm on year 16, like the changes aren't as dramatic. So I think what's so important in that first phase, it really does teach you patience and perseverance and following a process without necessarily having to see some grandiose results. Because you're gonna see those huge changes in those first phases of your fitness journey. And then as you go further along, the changes become so small, especially like week to week, month to month. You really gotta zoom out and look at like 6 months to a year and compare stuff at my level to start to see like, oh yeah, I see changes now. Because like I said, you've lost all that weight, right? It takes a long time to build muscle, and the body fat drops aren't as significant anymore. The person that you become and the mindset that you develop in those early, that early year, that first year, second year, getting all that weight off and getting to a place where you're a more fit body. Now, unfortunately, the changes aren't so visually like, wow. So how do I measure the changes? I do have to set sort of micro goals for myself, and some of them do get more attached to performance in the gym. So for example, I've been doing a lot of pull-ups. I set a pull-up goal for myself. That's something that just keeps me like focused on just doing that. And I know probably months from now, I'll see the changes in my back, but I'm not gonna see them next week or the week after, or even next month maybe. But I know I started off doing 6 pull-ups. This week I progressed to 8 to 10 pull-ups per set, and my goal is to get to 20. So we'll see. I've actually never done 20. I think the most I've done body weight was 12. So I set those little performance goals for myself. Another really weird, actually I have 2 other like physical goals. One, I mentioned before, I do want to get my waist down about a ½ inch to an inch. I'm 27.5 inches right now on my waist. I want to get that down just a little bit tighter. So that's one of my goals. And so just measuring that. And I know that's not going to happen week to week. It's going to be something that you hit just a level of body fat, and then it's like, boom, it just is there. If that makes any sense. And then another one is my calves. So I historically avoid training calves, and I have now implemented calf training into my routine 3 times a week. I know it's super unusual, I think, for I don't know, fitness athletes. It's not like a necessarily an area of focus for people, but I am pretty well developed everywhere else. So I don't need to focus so much effort and time building anything else. So it's really looking at these little tiny things and incorporating that into my programming. The other thing that I was going to mention is for fun. I guess for fun and also just, I don't know, I think there's almost like a competitive thing about it, is what I was realizing as I was filling this out. But I created a tracking spreadsheet for myself. And in this tracking spreadsheet, I'm mostly tracking my metrics alongside my training activities, so the calories burned and the time, and then my cardio activity, calories burned and the time. And then also tracking some subjective things like my hunger, my stress, my sleep levels, putting that all in a spreadsheet. So I adapted this from a girlfriend of mine, her name's Holly. She has a probably more comprehensive one. She tracks a lot of other markers. I didn't feel like tracking certain things, and also I follow a meal plan, so it wasn't really relevant for me to sit there and track my specific macros. But I do have noted in here, was it a high meal plan day or a low meal plan day? I'll show you guys really quickly on this spreadsheet. I just have the weeks listed out by days, my weight, my waist, hip measurements, my body fat. Now I will be getting my body fat tested, but I have not tracked that. My meal plan, calories, macros, and then I also have on here my resistance training. So it's my plan of my training is on here, the calories I burned per session. Now I track that on my Apple Watch. This is an estimated calorie expenditure. It's not 100% accurate, but it does give you some data. And what's cool here is I can already see, just going from week 1 to week 2, is I can see that my calorie burn is, from a training perspective, is equal, even though I cut out 1 day of training. I made sure that I was actually in the gym just a little bit longer. I also did some filming on these days, so these days are a little bit higher. And then on my cardio, same thing. I've already exceeded this week has already exceeded last week's cardio expenditure. And my steps, even though I put in red here for these last 2 days, I wasn't wearing my watch the full day, so I don't have an accurate number for Friday, Saturday, and I probably won't have one for tomorrow either. But my steps from last week were just over 42,000 total for the week. And for this week, I'm at almost 49,000. So I've already exceeded that, and you can see the calorie expenditure across the board has increased. So that's great. I'm burning more, and my weight is dropping, and my photos look tighter. So everything is great. So it's kind of cool to see these numbers. I just make it a point every morning to just pop in my computer, add in the numbers from the previous day to keep it updated. So we'll see how this goes, and I'm excited to see at the end. This goes all the way for 8 weeks. I have a little trip planned. Actually, I think it's the week after this. I have a little trip planned after 8 weeks with some friends. So we're gonna see where we end up mid-August, and probably just go pop back into maintenance. All right. 2 other questions that I wanted to cover in this video, and then I'll save the rest for another videos and not make this excessively long. One thing was, do I recommend a mini cut during a growth phase or during an extended growth phase? So I've actually never done a mini cut. This is my first mini cut that I can recall. So it's gonna be really person dependent. If somebody starts a build and they're not that lean to begin with, so say it's a female and she's 24% body fat and she's doing a build and she's now pushing up towards 30% body fat, now you're moving into the classified as overweight category, and you are going to experience some health markers decline, and there's also just some health risks that start to get heightened at that level. And then also, most women don't want to be 30% body fat, frankly. So from my experience, most of my clients do lean builds, and they're not interested in being 30% body fat. So in that case, it would make sense for someone to pause building and do a cut to get body fat back down and then resume a build. But for most people, my recommendation, what I like to do with my clients is we like to get them more on the leaner side so that you have room to grow. And you don't want to interrupt a build with a deficit if you can avoid it. Part of the reason is it takes some time to even get into a build to begin with, like if you want to do a lean build, because as you're starting to increase calories, your energy goes up and you start to do more stuff. And so even though you've increased calories, you're doing more activity and now you're burning all those calories off. So it's almost like for sometimes, and I've seen this happen, it could be a month, 2 months, or even up to 3 months where I've seen people were like chasing the surplus. We're chasing maintenance and we're chasing the surplus because increased calories, person becomes more active in their NEAT, in their day-to-day life. So they're more active, more calorie burn. Increased calories, more active, more calorie burn. You keep going until hopefully the person, their calories finally exceed their activity. And that can take some time to find that sweet spot. And the other part of that too is a lot of women that I work with, they can't eat all the food that's required to go into surplus right away. So it takes some time for the digestive system for them to even be able to stomach all the food that they need to eat. So that can take several weeks. Now, if you've done all that work to finally get yourself into a build, and now you're in a build for 3, 4, 5, ideally 6 months or longer, and then you stop and go into a mini cut, just because you feel fluffy or something, when your intention is to keep going, I would say keep going if you can. It'll then take you time to get back into that build. So I think it just delays the build process. But again, it's a case-by-case situation. There can be lifestyle considerations. There can be, like I say, health concerns. Somebody could get to a place where they're feeling so big that there's a lot of other things in their life. Like I know when I'm building, I get really sluggish and tired that I feel like it does start to adversely affect my work life and just my overall happiness. Not being a professional paid bodybuilder, like it's not my job. I don't make money bodybuilding. I don't want to sacrifice my overall happiness day to day by just feeling like really heavy and sluggish all the time. So there's a bell curve to it, I think. And I also think that's why there's so much benefit into working with a seasoned professional and a coach who has, of course, done it themselves, but also maybe worked with people they've moved them through these phases successfully, because you get so much value and so much knowledge and you learn how to do it and you sort of save yourself from sort of mishaps. Things that could be avoided. It saves you time. You can get to your goal faster. It's a great question. An extended growth phase. I know some women who think 3 months is a long time, and it's not. I would say a build phase, a good build phase, a year. Like that to me would be a year. For a man, it could be 18 months. It could be up to 2 years of building. So I don't know someone's definition of extended growth phase, but when possible, my recommendation is to not end the build just to do it, to just be done with the build and then just go into a fat loss phase and go all the way as far as you can go into a cut. Second question, what's the first thing I do when my cut comes to end? Well, that's a little premature since I'm on week 2, but we can talk about it. So when my cut ends, I plan on just going into maintenance. I want to really try to keep my body fats. I'm not going to stage level body fat, but I am going to be going to where I want to maintain. I'm a little bit higher now than I want to be as a maintenance because I was in a sort of a moderate build earlier this year. So my goal is just to kind of bring that down, but I'm not going to take it all the way to stage lean, if that makes sense. So what I will do is, this is a really short cut. And I have a really strong metabolism, and my body's very conditioned through sort of, let me say it this way, this is not my first rodeo. So my last 2, even my last 2 contest preps, when I got really lean, I didn't even do like a full reverse diet. I actually pretty much went up to maintenance calories like within 2 weeks. And my metabolism just fired through everything. So that was me, but I also realized that's not something I could have done in my earlier days because my metabolism and my body wasn't conditioned enough to just do that. But I have noticed that my body now, after a cut phase, I can go right up to maintenance calories and be totally fine. In fact, sometimes I actually get tighter and leaner. So I plan on just going up to maintenance calories. I'll probably keep my training the same. I am anticipating my cardio will go up over the next 8 weeks, but I'll probably start to bring it back down to my like week 1 level of cardio, which is like 30 to 35 minutes a day, just for good health, right? Like longevity. Okay, so last question for today. Somebody had asked me what percentage of my calories are for carbs on training days versus non-training days. And this, for me, it goes up quite high. It'll probably be like 50% of my calories, 40 to 50% of my calories will go to my training days. And then I only bring it down to like 1 serving of carbs on my non-training days. So it's not a huge difference. But the way that I look at it, it's going to be different from person to person because carbohydrates are intended, they're your primary energy source for your body. And they're the primary energy source utilized for resistance training. So the more intensely someone trains and the more muscle they have, the more carbohydrates they will need. So I had someone explain this to me, a physical therapist I worked with. I thought this is such a great analogy. He said, look at your muscles as kitchen cabinets. And kitchen cabinets are your muscle tissue. And when they're full of glycogen, which is carbohydrates stored in the muscle tissue. Now, when you weight train, you're basically using all those groceries. You're using all the glycogen up, and now the cabinets are empty again. They need to be filled up. But as you know, your cabinets can only hold so much. So what happens is a lot of people, they don't have very big cabinets, but they consume a lot of carbohydrates. They buy a lot of groceries. And so instead of putting everything in the cabinets, it starts to overflow, and then you have excess body fat. When you have someone with a lot of muscle tissue and they're burning through that constantly, they can fill up those cabinets a lot and frequently, and it's not overflowing into anything. It gets utilized really well. So for me, it makes sense to have a higher carbohydrate intake, particularly on my training days, because I am truly utilizing, I have a lot of mass. I am highly proficient at weight training, and so I burn a lot of that off, pretty much all of it. So I need to replenish that. Whereas somebody who doesn't have as much muscle tissue, who doesn't maybe train as hard or as long as I do, they may not need as much carbohydrates. So their percentage could be lower. And it's not even like they need to maybe cycle on high and low days, because I think for a lot of people, I don't want to say it's an advanced strategy. It's not necessarily going to help with fat loss. The intention is to help with energy expenditure. But again, for some people, those high and low days can overcomplicate things from a lifestyle perspective, changing up your macros or your meal plan on different days, your workouts moving around, you're dealing with your work schedule, your kids, your spouse, whatever's going on. Sometimes that can just overcomplicate things. So for some people, it might be better to just keep everything the same across the board. And honestly, in my maintenance phase, I tend to like to do that. I like to have things pretty consistent across the board. There's also hunger considerations, and from my experience as a coach, everybody is different. I have people who on training days, their hunger actually isn't so high, and it's the day after, which happens to be a rest day, where their hunger is like through the roof. So listening to tracking that, like even on my spreadsheet, or I have clients that report into me on a weekly basis, put those notes and send that to me. And so then we can start to identify these things and start to create a strategy that is better suited for their body and what's going on with them. But yeah, from a percentage wise, I set my protein target and then subtract the calories from that. And then about, I would say, 50 to 60% of the remaining calories will go towards carbohydrates. And again, that might change here. Towards the end of a dieting phase, everything kind of just goes low. It doesn't really matter if you have energy or not, because that's not the point of dieting. The point of dieting is not to try to hit PRs or try to keep your muscles full or anything like that. The point is to get the body fat off. And usually towards the end of a dieting phase, that other stuff kind of takes the back seat. So really important to keep in mind that when you're thinking about the sort of strategies for nutrition, some, yes, make sense for building, and some make sense for cutting. And you have to always prioritize what is the goal of this phase that I'm in. And if the goal is fat loss and you're not losing fat, but your energy sucks, and you have room to drop carbs, doesn't matter what the percentage is, you need to drop the carbs because that's what's going to get the rest of the body fat off. So that was a great question. I'll keep you guys updated too. I'll calculate the percentages on this next week so you guys can see kind of what the ratios are. I don't really think of it like that. It's just like, hey, this is what I gotta eat. All right, so that's a wrap for week 2. I don't think we're gonna be making any adjustments to my nutrition. My coach has looked at my photos, sent me a message. He's like, I'll get back to you later, but you look great. I'm like, cool. So I'm not anticipating any changes. I'm just full speed ahead on this course. And I think that for me personally, I'm content with these macros. I am hungry and I don't really want to go lower. So I think we're probably gonna keep things the same for another week. But I will keep you guys posted in next week's episode. If we do make any changes, my training is gonna stay the same, same training block for this next coming week. And yeah, I'll keep you guys posted on the rest. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment below and I will make sure to cover it next time.